Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm Teresa. This is Lost My Thread. Today I'm going to be checking in with my New Year's resolutions for 2023. It is New Year's Eve, the final day of 2022, and it seemed like the perfect opportunity to look back at the sewing resolutions that I set myself last year, but also think about whether I wanted to change any of those for the year going forward. I'm also going to be sharing with you my 23 goals for the year 2023. I'll start with my sewing resolutions from last year though, and I feel like on the whole I've done a pretty good job of sticking to them, and I don't actually think I really want to change them going forward. They were never intended to be for just 1 year. They were things that I was hoping to just change in my sewing practice in general. I will say that I probably have a slightly different approach to some of those resolutions, so I'm just going to run through each of them now. The first resolution I gave myself is to enjoy it, to remind myself that sewing is supposed to be fun. I feel like I did a pretty good job of doing this. I think the key ways I wanted to make sure that this happened was, one, not to overcommit myself. I feel like I did a good job, and there were a lot of opportunities that came up. Some that I really wanted to do over the last year, but I actually just said no to, because I learned as the year went on, if I had more than one commitment per month, whether that was a sewing video collaboration or a sewing challenge or a gift that I was making somebody, any more than one commitment per month equaled stress. And so I have learned that if I want to enjoy my sewing, I need to make sure I'm not overcommitting myself. It was a shame to say no to some opportunities that I really would have loved to take part in, but I feel like for me it's more important to have a good balance overall, and I feel like I did achieve that. I do want to make sure I'm going to stick with the same goal going forward. One of the other things I wanted to try to do to make my sewing just a bit more relaxed in general is to try to avoid feeling like once I start a project I need to see it through to the end necessarily. It's okay to take breaks from a project, and it's okay if you're just not in the mood for a particular project on a day when you feel like sewing. I feel like that's something that I see very commonly in the knitting community, that people will often have multiple knitting projects on the go, and then depending on their mood, what they want to do on a day, they'll pick up one or the other. But I don't see that so much in sewing, and I really don't know why. I feel like there are days when you feel like working on an easy project and days when you want a more challenging project. And so allowing myself that flexibility has been really, really good. If you watched my Vlogmas videos, you would have seen me powering through lots of bowl cozies that I was making as gifts. And there was a day when I had a sewing day and I decided I'm putting a pause on the bowl cozies to work on something else that I'm going to enjoy a bit more on the day. And I really did enjoy the process so much more than if I had pushed myself to work through the bowl cozies. I got around to all my bowl cozies. I finished all of those in the end. I will say that was probably the one way that I fell down a little bit on not giving myself too much pressure and time commitments within my sewing. But that is something that I have a tendency to do over the Christmas period. I always overcommit. Anyone who took part in a gift to November, where you made all of your sewing gifts early in November, hats off to you guys. I probably need to try and do that last year, but there's something kind of fun about working on Christmas projects throughout December, so I'm not making any promises. But I feel like I found a good balance for me in general, and I did enjoy the sewing a bit more. I did feel like there were times when I had too many sewing projects on the go. So there were times when I had like 3 or 4 different things that was like partway through completion. It did feel a bit chaotic. And when I went in to work on the projects, it was taking me a while to tune into them. So I think there's definitely pros and cons of working on one project or multiple. I think the key thing for me is I'm going to try to not have more than 2 projects that I'm working on at a given time. And then that gives me some flexibility, but also then just keeps it a little bit more in line so that I'm not going to be completely lost when I start sewing again. The second resolution I gave myself last year was to buy less and use more of what I've got. And I feel like that's gone pretty well. So I do now have a really good way of organizing both my fabric and my patterns so that I know exactly what I have. I felt like that was a starting point that I needed, and I did have all that with my fabric last year, but I hadn't gotten there with my patterns yet. So I have a cupboard where all of my fabric lives. It's all rolled up and it's tied with some string, and I have written on there what the fabric is, where it came from, and how big of a piece I have. So that means that when I'm doing some planning, I can just open the cupboard door, see what I've got, check if I've got the right amounts of fabric so that I'm going to use what I have. And I feel like it has really worked for me. Not saying that I haven't bought new fabric, because I've definitely bought new fabric, but I've always been checking first what I do have to see if I have anything suitable, and that's been really satisfying to work through some of my older stash. As far as my sewing patterns, I now have all of my patterns up on Trello, and I've done a pretty good job of maintaining that as well, so that when I get a new pattern, if I don't put it up straight away onto Trello, I usually do it within the week or so of getting the pattern, and that just helps me to remember what I have. And that has also meant that when I was interested in making other garments, I have checked my Trello and thought a little bit more about, can I use this as a starting point to make exactly what I want. So I will say that I have been pattern hacking a lot this year. I have been very much hacking the heck out of the Concord tee by Cashmerette. So that was a shirt that I had made last year, t-shirt that I made that I found that I really liked. It worked well for me, and so I decided to just take that t-shirt and run with it. I actually made 7 different hacked versions of the Concord tee in the last year. None of them were exactly like the pattern designed, but they were all unique and they all were what I needed at the time. And I was able to get so many different tops out of that one pattern. I do plan to make a video about that at some point, just because I feel like it's really useful for people to realize that you can actually go quite far with just a single t-shirt pattern. But for me, it was also just a really great way to feel like I was actually just using the pattern that I had, rather than buying another pattern with some of the features that I might like. I also took a break from sewing any new Me Made garments for the whole month of May as part of my Me Made May pledge. So I was allowing myself to refashion. I actually refashioned 6 garments last year in quite a dramatic way. So I took things, cut them up, and created something completely different. That was something that I hadn't done a lot of, and it was really satisfying. Most of those did happen during the month of May. The other thing I was doing during that month was pulling out any Me Made garments that I wasn't wearing and either just saying goodbye to them if they weren't working for me. But most of them, honestly, I was able to just do some small alterations to make them more wearable, or just do all that mending that I've been waiting to get done so that I could actually get those clothes back into my wardrobe. And I feel like that was just a really good way to use what I had and not pull out all the new fabrics to create those garments. I think I'm probably going to do a similar thing this year in May, because I found it so satisfying to do. The third resolution I gave myself was to slow down and make clothes to last. I feel like this one's been a good one for me, and it's been a good reminder throughout the year. I've been doing definitely more French seams, so making clothes completely with French seams, which I feel like not only makes them beautiful on the inside and out, but also just means that they're going to last a lot longer and they're much more strong, secure seams. I have also been really enjoying my hand sewing. I have been doing things like making thread chains to attach elements of garments together on the inside, but I've also been doing a fair amount of hand sewing just to create a neat finish and bring parts of the garment together. And it's something that I want to tuck into a little bit more in the coming year, and you will see that come up in my 23 for 2023 goals. My fourth resolution is to be thoughtful. Separates need to pair. And this is something I had struggled with in the past, of making a lot of garments that were just standalone and didn't really go with anything else in my wardrobe. I feel like this year I really had that in mind, particularly when I was doing my planning. So I do my seasonal plans videos, and I've been trying to think that if I'm making garments, they need to have something else with them that they're going to go with. I will say that I feel like I have more separates now in my Me Made wardrobe than I did before, and so it has made it really interesting and fun to try and pair those things together, and I think that's something that I've been particularly enjoying in the autumn and winter. But I will say, in general, I feel like I've been pretty good at, when I'm making something in the month, I want to think, right, is this going to go with anything else? Is there anything else in my plans that I want to prioritize to make sure that then it's got something to go with it? And I did have definitely quite a few months where a lot of the garments I made were absolutely interchangeable, could mix and match. There was one month where I made almost like a mini capsule, and I had all these garments that I could just pair together. And part of that was just from finding one thing that I felt like really wasn't going to go with a ton of other stuff in my wardrobe. So it pushed me to make sure that I could make something else that month so that it wasn't going to be standalone. So this is something that I will be very much bearing in mind going forward. And it's been so much fun just to get to play with those separates now. And the final resolution that I gave myself for my sewing was to be brave and to take part in the sewing community. I feel like this has been the year for me taking part in the sewing community. You know, it's all relative, guys, but for me, it's been massive. So I have started to take part in YouTube collaborations, which was new for me. Hadn't done that before. It was a lot of fun. I don't necessarily want to do a ton of YouTube collaborations just because I feel like I know what I want to have on my YouTube channel, what I like to watch, and I feel like it can get a little bit samey if you're having just a lot of the same kinds of videos. So I do still want to do those, and I think I certainly will going forward, but I'm not necessarily going to be doing them all the time. Also, sewing meetups. I've gone to a lot of sewing meetups this year. I went to the Stitch Festival. I went to some sewing party. So it was a party at the new craft house, the Summer of Love party. Really enjoyed that. Really loved getting to be in a room with people who all loved the same stuff and had all made their own garments. Well, mostly everyone had made their own garments, so we could compare notes and we could touch each other's fabric and enjoy what each other were wearing. I also went out on some, I want to call them like sewing dates. So I went fabric shopping with a sewing friend a couple of times, actually I've done that. I also had a day where I got together with a friend of mine who was learning to sew, and we hung out and I was teaching her what she was doing as we were going. I think we've done that a couple of times as well. I feel like it's been really nice to get out there in the community. There was even a party that was supposed to happen, the New Craft House Christmas party, that was canceled. And so I decided to organize something myself with the people who were planning to go to the party so that we could still meet up, and we went out for dinner and we went for a walk along the River Thames. I feel like it's been a year for me to get right into the sewing community face to face as opposed to virtually like I had before. And it's been really nice. And I've met some awesome people that I would never have met otherwise. So I do definitely want to keep doing some of that this coming year. I will say that I did feel a little bit more of some kind of internal pressure if there was an event that, oh, I should really go there, I should really do this. But actually, I'm going to allow myself to just relax a little bit. Just because something comes up doesn't mean I have to do it, but I am definitely going to pick out any of the sewing meetups, get-togethers, London Stitchers meetups, parties that I feel like I really am excited about, and go to more of those going forward in general. The other thing that I wanted to talk about today is my plans of things that I want to do for the year 2023. So this is not going to focus on the screen. I'll just pop it up there so that you guys can see it. If you're not familiar with the concept, so this is my 23 for 2023. I heard about this idea from the Love to Sew podcast. They got it from the Happier podcast by Gretchen Rubin, who's the one who created this. The idea is that you create a list of things that you want to do throughout the coming year. They're not necessarily like big, impressive things that you're going to do. It might be things that you've been intending to do for a long time and just haven't gotten around to it, or things that you know when you do them, you always enjoy them, but you don't necessarily think to do them. I will say that some of these are sewing related and some of them are not. I think probably about half of them at the end are sewing related. So if you're only interested in sewing stuff, use my chapters, skip to the sewing plans that I have for 2023. But I thought it would be fun to go through the things I'm hoping to do in the coming year that I feel like will just make this next year more fulfilling and more satisfying. I did this for 2020. The first time I did it was in 2020. And as you all may know, 2020 did not go to plan. There were a lot of things I was hoping to do in 2020 that did not take into account a global pandemic that unfortunately came and took over everything. But I did still really enjoy going through and doing the things that I could. The last few years, I've given myself a bit of a break because I did not want to give myself any pressure to do things. I just wanted to get by, as I think so many of us were. But I feel like this year I'm ready to actually give myself some goals, and I'm going to run through what I'm hoping to do this year now. The first one is to celebrate observance days for a bit of fun. Now, I did talk about this briefly on my Vlogmas video. My husband and I have been going through a website called there'sadayforthat.com, which lists all of the observance days, which is like the national day of this, the international day of that. Every day has about 10 things on there, and most of them we're not really interested in, but there are quite a few, I would say, that come in throughout the month that we think, let's write that down. Maybe we'll have hot dogs on National Hot Dog Day. Maybe we'll decide to go mini golfing on International Mini Golf Day. If we don't, we don't. But it's just something to give us an idea of something fun we might want to do, something nice that we might want to treat ourselves to, and then we can do a little toast to ourselves for celebrating the national or international day. My second one on here is to go on at least 3 picnics. Now this is a good low-key goal, one that I feel like kind of shows what the idea of this 23 for 2023 is all about. It's not necessarily life-changing stuff, but I do know that whenever my husband and I go on a long walk, we have a great time. If we go on a long walk, stop, sit down, have a picnic, carry on walking, it's a good day. And it's something that you can easily, or we can easily just not bother doing because life gets busy, you don't think about it. But if it's on my list of things to do, it's gonna remind me. And we probably will go on a picnic at some point this year. There's a very good chance that we might go on 2 picnics. We just decide to do it. But if it's on my list to do 3 or more, I feel like it's just gonna push me to do it a little bit more often. And I know that I'll have a good time when I do it. Number 3 is to spend a day on the beach. And this just comes from me knowing that if I am near a large body of water, whether that's like Lake Michigan or the ocean, I just find it so calming, so relaxing, so good for my mind and body. And it's something that I could easily just not get around to doing. But I know that if I put it on here and commit myself to spending 1 full day on the beach, relaxing and enjoying myself, I'm giving myself a good day in 2023. My 4th goal is to go swimming. Now that could well be the day on the beach that I go swimming, but there's a chance that I might go to the beach on a day when it's not appropriate for swimming, or it's not the right time of the year, or it's not a place where you can swim. So I can go swimming in a pool. I can go swimming in my parents' backyard if we go home and it's a good time to swim. I can go to a local pool and go swimming. But the main thing is I need to go swimming at some point. I made 2 bathing suits a couple of years ago, and I don't know if I've worn them at all in the last year. So I need to find some opportunities to go swimming. Number 5 is to attend an art exhibition. Now this is something that my husband and I do often do, so most likely it will just naturally happen anyway, but it could not happen. And I know that when I do go to art exhibitions, I just find them so inspiring. I find it so wonderful to see people's creativity, and I want to make sure that I make some time to do that in the coming year. Goal number 6 is to go to the cinema or an outdoor movie viewing. Now, I have to say, I think it's been quite a few years since I've been to the cinema, to the movie theater, and I know that when I do, it's always a really fun atmosphere. It's really nice to be around other people who are also really enjoying the movie, but it's pricey. You're not going to do it every day, and I feel like I wouldn't usually want to do it unless there was something that I was especially excited to see. But I know that there are cinemas in London that show old movies. It doesn't have to be a new release. You can watch an old favorite or an old classic movie, and I think that would be really fun. There are also some places that do outdoor movie viewing. Some of them are free, where you sit in a park with other people, and I feel like that's such a cool environment. I've definitely done that in Chicago, but I haven't done it in London. So wherever I am in the world, I want to take some time to go see a movie in a big group with other people, because it's just fun. Number 7 is to make donuts. It's a simple one. It is what it says on the box. I actually made some donuts in 2020 as part of my 20 for 2020 goals. I was making a different type of bread every month, and the donuts were amazing. But we made so many donuts, and my husband and I gradually worked through a whole lot of donuts, and it was a bad scene. Like it wasn't good. It's not a way to be. It was fun for the one-off, but there's no way I could be doing that regularly. I've been wanting to find an opportunity to make donuts and share them with more people. So I've decided this year I'm gonna make sure it happens. I'm gonna make a nice batch of donuts and bring it to the family to share, so that way everyone else can enjoy them, but also I get to eat those delicious donuts because I wanna have them again. Number 8 is to reread a favorite old book. And this is one of these things where I'm essentially giving myself permission to do it, because I do often feel like when I'm reading, I should be reading something new that I haven't read before, that there's a big stack of books that I've been wanting to read, that I've been given, that I've heard are really good. But there's just something really great about reading an old favorite, and you know you're going to enjoy it. There's something just so cozy tucking into that. And I want to do that this year, and I'm telling myself that this is something that I want to do. So not only is it okay, but it's something that I'm gonna make a point to do, and I think that's gonna be really fun. Number 9 is to go out for a fancy dinner. My husband and I don't go out a ton just because it is really expensive to eat out in London, but it's always just so nice to do it. It's nice to not have to make the food yourself, but also you can just sit in a different atmosphere. I feel like when you're out at a restaurant, just changes the conversation because you're in a different environment than just sitting at home. This one will probably come up with my wedding anniversary, so I'll talk about that one a little bit later, but not necessarily. I can go out for a fancy dinner on another occasion if I feel like it. Number 10 is to float in a flotation tank. This is also called a sensory deprivation tank. Now this is something I feel like was kind of popular in the early 2000s, and I did go into a flotation tank a few times around that time, but I haven't done it for a long time, and it's something that just went out of my mind as something to do. But it's a really cool experience. So if you're not familiar with it, the idea is that you get into like a big bathtub essentially that is completely like your body temperature, and it is filled with salt so that you float on the top of it, kind of like the Dead Sea. And then there's a big cover that goes over the top, which takes out any light. It also takes out any sound. So all that is left is you in the flotation tank, just with your thoughts and with your mind. Even if you're not someone who meditates or intending to meditate, you get so zoned out in a flotation tank. There is no way but to just relax. After you've been there for like 15-20 minutes, your brain just wanders. And I have definitely been in there having kind of strange visions, weird thoughts, definitely going into another place in my brain, but absolutely relaxing to the max. I have never felt more just mellow and zen as when I've come out of a flotation tank. And I feel like myself in 2023 could really do with getting into that kind of a state. So I'm going to make a point to find somewhere to do that. And I think it's going to be very good for me. Number 11 is to complete the new Yoga with Adriene 30-day yoga journey called Center that's coming out on the 1st of January, probably when this video comes out. I have been taking part in the Yoga with Adriene 30-day yoga journeys for quite a few years. I think this might be my 4th year. Not too sure, but I've definitely really gotten a lot out of doing these. And one of the aims of that is that you'll be doing yoga every single day for 30 days. And she will just gradually ramp up the intensity, but she will also just mix up. Some days are more like relaxing and stretching. Some days are more quite intense and core work. I feel like it's just such a good balance for me, and I have loved every year that I've taken part. So this one I know I'm gonna do, but I'm putting it on here as an easy win because I wanna make sure that I do it. I'm gonna be starting on the 1st of January, and at the end of the month, I can cross that one off. Number 12 is to visit a new part of the UK. I've been living in the UK since 2003, but there is just so much more of this country that I have not explored. If anyone has any particular recommendations of somewhere that I must go, I would love to hear about it in the comments down below, particularly anywhere that's easily accessible from London. Anywhere that's like a day trip that you can get to from London would be great, but we may well go somewhere a little bit longer. Key thing is I want to make sure that I push myself to go and explore a little bit more of this beautiful country. Number 13 is to see a play. I really do love the theater. Not so much musical theater, if I'm honest, guys, but I really do love going to see a play, but I definitely do not prioritize doing that every year, but it's something that just really fulfills me. I studied acting when I was younger, and I really do enjoy seeing good acting. I love seeing good theater, and there's so much going on in London that I know I'm just oblivious to, so I'm gonna make sure that we go and see something this year. Goal number 14 is to knit a hat. I've been knitting for a few years now. I have never knitted a hat, and it just feels like something that every knitter needs to do. Also, the hat that I have that I love, that I've had for years, is really wearing out and it needs to be replaced. So good opportunity for me to get those knitting needles out and try something new. Number 15 is to meet up with a sewing friend face to face. Now, I've actually been doing this quite a lot over the last year, so I feel like it's pretty much a guarantee that I'm going to do it in the coming year, but I want to make sure that it does because it's been really fun to get to meet up with sewing people and actually spend some time talking all things sewing. Goal number 16 is to go fabric shopping in person. I have way more fabric that I've bought online these days than face to face, but there is just nothing like getting to see the fabric in person, touch the fabric, see how it reacts, feel the texture, see what it actually moves like. Fabric shopping in person is where it's at, guys, and I don't actually do it a ton, and so I want to make sure that I do a little bit more of that this year. Number 17 is to sew an old favorite sewing pattern. So I've got myself wanting to read an old favorite book. Sewing patterns though, I have things that I have made, and when I made them I was like, this is so great, I want to make this again sometime, and then my brain just moves on to the next thing and I completely forget about it. But there are things that I've made years and years ago even that I haven't revisited for so long, and I think it would be really fun to go back to some of those older projects and see what I could do with them now with a little bit more practice and a little bit more experience in my sewing. Number 18 is kind of the opposite. I want to buy and sew up a sewing pattern within a week of it being released. I've never done that, guys. I've seen patterns and I've gone, ooh, I would love to get that, and I would love to make that up immediately. But I have all these other things I should be working on, or I shouldn't really just swoop into it, because what if when I see other people's versions, it's not what I think it's gonna be? But how fun to be just in that moment, in the zeitgeist of what's exciting and what just came out. I'm giving myself permission to do that at least just once this year and see if I enjoy it. And I can feel very much a part of what is going on in the sewing community. Number 19 is to sew with a new to me textile. I've sewn with a lot of different textiles, so there's not a lot that I haven't sewn with, but whenever I do, it's always just really interesting. And I feel like I learn a lot more about sewing, and I feel like it just enhances what I'm doing with the fabrics that I'm familiar with. But I feel like I just need to push myself a little bit in my sewing, and that for me seems like the most fun way to do that this year. Goal number 20 is the big one, guys. It's definitely the one that I feel like is the most ambitious, but also one that I'm probably the most excited about. The 29th of November 2023 is my 20th wedding anniversary. So I've decided that I'm going to refashion my me-made wedding dress. So I made a dress way back in 2003 for my wedding, and I still have it upstairs in the loft in a box, not getting used. The fabric is gorgeous. There's a ton of it because there was a big train. I had a load of covered buttons down the back with rouleau loops that I had made. I put so much into that dress, of course, as anybody would into a wedding dress. And I feel like I want to be able to wear that gorgeous fabric again. I want to be able to do something with that garment. It seems like a big, intimidating, scary thing. But I've been doing a lot more refashioning this year, and I've come to realize that if something is sitting in a box, it's not really doing anything for me there. So what really is the risk? Of course, I will go with a pattern that I feel confident that I know is going to work out for me. But what I thought would be really fun would be to actually refashion it to go out for dinner for our wedding anniversary at the end of November. So I have quite a bit of time to plan and think about what I want to do, practice the pattern to make sure that I'm confident that I'm going to be able to make something that I know I'm going to love wearing. But I think it's going to be a really fun project, and I'm excited to share it with you guys when the end of November comes. Goal number 21 is to make a wall hanging. This has been on my mind for a while, so if I put it on the list, hopefully I'll actually do it rather than just talk about it. I have lots of fabric scraps, and a lot of them pair really well together, and so I have this idea of making kind of like an improv quilt that I can then hang on the wall. I have two ideas in mind of things that I want to do with them, and I've picked out some fabrics from my extra little scraps I've got, and I feel like they'll both be super cool and quite different, and I can put them in the background of my videos, and I can swap them so that I can change it up from time to time. I'm so excited by the idea, but like I said, I've had this idea for a couple of years, haven't done anything with it, so this year I'm going to make at least one wall hanging, hopefully two wall hangings, but at least one wall hanging out of my fabric scraps, share the process with you guys, and it's just going to brighten up my sewing space. Number 22 is to experiment with natural dyes. This is something I've been really wanting to do. I had some fun with dyeing in general last year, which I hadn't done a ton of before, but natural dyes seems just so cool. I have a ton of avocado skins and avocado pits in my freezer sitting and waiting for me. I love the color that you get from avocado dye, so I'll be really excited to try and play around with that. I'm thinking I might do a little bit of like gradual dipping to get different variegation of color on there. I'm not entirely sure what I want to do with it, which is probably why I haven't gotten around to doing it. But this year, probably in the warmer months, I'm going to make a point to play around with some avocado dye, potentially some other natural dyes, see what happens. It's a fun experiment. I know I'll have fun one way or another, honestly. And goal number 23 is one that I alluded to before. I want to sew an entire garment by hand. I've been enjoying my hand sewing. I feel like I want to embrace that slow sewing thing. And how incredible would it be to have a garment, to be able to wear a garment that you've made completely with your own hands. I feel like I get so much from knitting in that way that I've like created the textile. But hand sewing, I feel like there's something quite special about it. And whenever I have a hand sewn element in a garment, I look at it and I notice it and it makes me happy. And I feel like you can see my hand in the garment in a way that you can't from something that's gone through my machine. So I'm just gonna go for it. I'm sure I'm gonna go for a simple project. I need to think carefully about what I wanna make, what would make sense being sewn by hand. I've seen other people doing it in the sewing community and it seems so cool. I've been really inspired by other people doing it and I'm gonna go for it this year. 2023, I'm gonna sew a whole garment by hand. Now, all of these goals in general, I will say, I am not putting myself under pressure that I have to complete these. It's more about just giving myself ideas and suggestions of things that I might want to do that might just enhance my life, bring me a little bit of joy, things that I know will make me happy if I do them. If I don't, it just means that I either didn't really want to do them that badly or I just didn't have the opportunity to do them. And that's cool. And I might roll them through to next year, or I might just say, actually, I don't think I'm so interested in that now. But it's just fun for me to try and think about ways that I can just make the year 2023 a little bit brighter. And I feel like I've done that with my lists. I would love to hear if you guys have any sewing goals or any personal goals that you're giving yourself in the coming year. Please let me know, particularly if you are doing a 23 for 2023. Stick that down in the comments box. I want to read everyone's goals. I want to hear about what you are pushing yourself to do in the coming year. And please note, some of that can be gentle, low-key stuff. It doesn't all have to be running a marathon. If you're running a marathon, awesome. I'm not running a marathon this year. But all the things I've put for myself, I know are just small things that I feel like will just bring me joy. And I want to do that if I can. And I would love to hear ways that you are doing that for yourself too. Please give me a like if you enjoyed today's video. Make sure that you are subscribed down below if you want to see more of my future videos, including some of me working towards some of the goals that I've mentioned in today's video. I'll see you guys soon. Bye!